If you're looking for clear, pro-life thinking, cutting-edge apologetics, and a fresh approach to abortion dialogue, you've come to the right place. This is the Equipped for Life podcast.
Well, I'm excited to introduce a special guest joining my podcast today. Her name is Julie Dodson. She is a patient advocate for Avenues for Women, a medical pregnancy resource center serving abortion-minded women and families in Frankfort, Kentucky.
There you go.
She was trained in relationship enhancement through her work with Ideals of Kentucky, which is a nonprofit counseling agency. This training and experience has shaped her style of deep empathy to connect with people from a wide range of backgrounds and beliefs, including children, teens, adults, couples, families, homeless, the incarcerated, and women exiting the sex industry. In addition to her work with Avenues for Women, she works as a wellness coach for CareWorks of Kentucky, which provides care and coaching in corporate settings. And she is also the director of student ministry with her local church.
I'm busy.
You are very, very busy.
Really busy. Yeah.
Julie holds a BA in Specialized Ministries from Mid-America Christian University in Oklahoma City and a master's in mental health counseling from Asbury Theological Seminary. She is licensed in Kentucky as a marriage and family therapist and is a certified relationship enhancement program presenter. She is also certified in child-centered play therapy and is Filial Therapy?
Filial. Yeah, that's right.
What is that? I don't know what play therapy is. What's Filial Therapy?
Yeah. So Filial Therapy is it's really like teaching parents or important caregivers in a child's life to basically do child-centered play therapy with their own kids. So they become the therapeutic force in their own child's life. It's very well researched and all things documented. It's so good. So that's all part within, with the relationship enhancement stuff.
Got it. So you live in Frankfort, Kentucky with Andrew, your husband of 10 years, and your dog Carter. Mm-hmm. And then your bio also says you're expecting your first child, miracle, a quote unquote miracle with quite a story in January.
Story. That's right.
So welcome to the Equipped for Life podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but ask you about the baby miracle story that's referencing your bio if you're comfortable sharing.
Sure.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So this is all within God's timing. About 10 years ago, not 10 years ago, that was when right after we first got married. About 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with unexplained amenorrhea, potentially premature ovarian failure. And so that was in 2014. So it's been 6 years. And all the while, I just was very confident that God just kept on saying to wait, not try infertility treatments, not even seek adoption, because we're very pro-adoption, but just wait. And so he very much kept my heart at peace, just not knowing how he would develop our family, but I knew that he had a good plan for us, and we just waited and waited, and here we go, 2020, and so baby is due next year in January.
Congratulations!
Yeah,
that's
thank
super
you very
cool.
much. Yeah, it is.
I've been looking forward to talking to you on the podcast. So you reached out in an email, just straight up, just initiated an email conversation. You had taken the Equipped for Life course, and you just started talking about the work that you were doing, which was super complimentary to the stuff that we do. It doesn't feel like there's a lot necessarily in contrast. It's more just, I see it as extending the kinds of things that we try to teach people and how to have dialogue. And so once I started looking into your work, I was just like, this is just an opportunity for the people who, pay attention to us or listen to our podcast, who are trying to have difficult conversations with people to just get even more advanced and pick up some skills from you, an expert in this, that they haven't learned from me. So I'm excited for that. And why don't we start by you telling us about what you call showing understanding skill?
Yeah, or what is called showing understanding skill.
What is that?
I did not develop this. So showing understanding skill is a skill within a wider range or wider program called relationship enhancement. So that was developed by Dr. Bernard Gurney. It's pivotal in child-centered play therapy, which was developed by his wife, Dr. Louise Gurney, also brilliant, and filial therapy. So it's a wide umbrella. And so showing understanding skill is the listening and empathy skill that we teach within the program. So there's also expression skill, which you guys in some of your stuff actually do a great job of hitting on some of the pieces of expression skill without even knowing it. So
I've never heard the phrase, so that's cool.
Good job. I'll tell you about that later. It's so good.
I'm looking forward to it.
So showing understanding skill, again, it's been around since Bernie developed it back in the 1960s. It has over 40 years of documented research of how effective it is with relationships of all different types. And so that's what we're trying to do, is have relational dialogues with people. And as I would just, was going through the course and listening, especially a couple of those modules, I was like, this would be just an extra tool for you all to try and see if it fits. And it's been working for me. I've been using it and teaching it for over 12 years now. And while there's a lot of other great, listening means out there and different tools that people have, I haven't found anything that works better for me, and I haven't found any reason to change. And I love to teach it and share it because it's easy. It takes practice just like any skill does, but I'm going to teach you today and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I want as quick as we can to put at least some flesh on the bones, just so that people have some kind of a sense of what does that mean? Like maybe if you could even just do like a quick, like a 101 or just a quick overview of some of what fits in there, and then we can dive into the details.
Okay, so showing understanding skill, like I said, it's a listening or empathy skill. Okay. And it's basically a way to listen and respond to people in a way that helps them feel heard and understood. Because I don't know about you, but I tend to do better and just think better and process. And when I feel heard and understood, when there's this sense of relational safety. Yeah. And you guys have talked a lot about that on your podcast and in your training. Like when we're meeting, especially whether it's with people that we already know or people that we're just meeting for the very first time, this may be our only shot with them.
And it's critical because, you ask, there's a difference between when you feel heard and when you don't feel heard or understood. And I'm like, it's a huge difference. It's like all the difference in the world in the way that I'm both feeling during the conversation, how I'm feeling toward them, and even the things I'm choosing to say. A lot of that comes down to, do I feel like we're both on this journey together? Yeah. Or is this person like in fight mode and we're just playing at this weird debate game?
And it doesn't mean that you have to agree. Like you can have very good, safe dialogues with people and you can disagree with them from here until next Tuesday. Yeah. And so that's also why the skill is so helpful, because you can show understanding to someone who believes nothing that you do and still do it and do it really well and get down to some of the deeper issues. A lot of what people talk about, when they begin, it's not the main issue. It's not the deeper issue. And so the longer, sometimes it takes a little bit to get down to the real issue, but the longer you, in my case, use this skill, like you'll get as low as they will allow you to go.
Yeah.
And then,
sorry,
go ahead. No. Well, and then that's when you can sometimes address the real issue, because otherwise we're just kind of wasting time with surface stuff.
Yeah.
And we don't have time to waste. Yeah. I don't know about you, but
no, that's really good. So I'm guessing this goes beyond merely the distinction between active and passive listening, because that's something that I've talked about a bit. Like I don't know if I got this from somewhere or if I think I just made it up. I've just always compared it to active and passive reading. Like there's that difference where you can be reading a book and sometimes you just fall into that thing where you get lost in your own thoughts and then you're like, what has been happening for the last 3 pages? Like, I've got to go back. Like, this is like a whole thing. And then there's active reading. It's like you're trying to learn this as if you're going to go teach it. It's just it's a different thing. Yeah. And listening is like that. But I feel like you're talking about even deeper than that distinction.
Right. So first of all, if for any of the listeners or watchers active listening, it's not a bad thing. It's a great, or any other kind of listening model. It's a great step in the right direction because it slows dialogues down. You know, it helps you process what the other person says as opposed to just back and forth, and no one's really listening to each other.
Yeah.
So it's a good step. It was what I was taught within my master's, degree. It wasn't until I got into practicum and, kind of more internship type things that I learned this skill. So showing understanding is a bit different. Again, if whatever works for you, just go with it. That's great. But this is just a little bit different. And again, you can disagree with me if you want, but in my professional opinion, I think this works. I think it works better. I think it's more effective with a wider range of people. It sounds less clinical and less rehearsed than stuff that a lot of times even professionals were taught. Like, so what I hear you saying is what I understand that we'll get to that in point number 3.
Yeah.
But you can use this with the person that checks you out of the grocery store, and it's not going to sound like that you're trying to work them.
Right. It doesn't feel like that. Like, I know, like sometimes like people, once you know about sandwich method, where like you say something nice and then the critical thing and then a nice thing, like once you know that, you start recognizing when people do it. And this is like one of those things where it's less obvious that it's more subtle what you're doing. I want to ask you real quick about a phrase you just used because I love it and yet I don't fully understand it, but I think there's a lot there.
Maybe I don't either. So
no, it's really good. You said it. You said that this kind of listening slows dialogue down. Yeah. Why exactly does it slow dialogue down?
Why does this or active listening slow dialogue down?
Yes.
Well, let's say you say something, and then instead of me just coming back at you with whatever
counter-argument,
I would say counter-arguments or even my perspective, or people do this a lot of times with dreams. Someone will share a dream and they'll be real excited, and then the other person just starts talking about
here's
their
what
dream.
my dream was last night.
I was just talking about my dream.
Right.
This was important to me. Why I'm sharing it with you. Right. So stuff like active listening, and in this case, showing understanding skill, it does slow you down because you're checking in a way to make sure that you are on track with the other person.
Right. You're getting to like what you would have said further down into the conversation because you're taking that time to really react appropriately to what they said.
Right. And to stay with their experience.
Love
this is
it.
what they're telling you. And then they may go on to tell you more, which is usually what happens. Or they may kind of get to the bottom and then they're more ready to hear from you, which is what we want.
Okay. I'm ready to hear the steps.
Okay. All right. So before we get to the steps, we got to do a little bit of background. First, we need to talk about empathy. So empathy, of course, is it's not just a buzzword. It's a huge part of society right now. What people say, you need to be empathic, have empathy, listen with empathy, but we're not really taught exactly how to do that, which is why we're going to do what we're doing today. But Josh, for you, like how, when you're trying to explain simply empathy to someone, like what do you say?
I try to talk about like really getting into the other person's shoes, trying to imagine if they're talking about some really difficult life circumstance. So and then the topic of abortion, like people share the most intimate personal parts of their lives sometimes. You might have a woman sharing with you about her rape experience from before. And it's like, okay, you got to stop here. Yeah. We're not doing pro-life apologetics right now. We're you got to, empathize as much as you can and respond appropriately to that. Even if you haven't had that exact experience before, try to be as empathetic as you can and just see this person as a valuable human and not just, it's like, this is a person who's having experiences and lives just like you, and try to enter their world as much as you can. But I know there's so much more to it than that.
Which is why I'm going to add to that. That's a great start. It was a great start, Josh. So a lot of people, when we're doing trainings and everything, we usually hear, put yourself in the other person's situation and the other person's shoes, which is a great start. Go with that. Start with that. But there's a deeper level to empathy, and we'll talk more about this number 2. But it is, to me, it's more about it's not about me imagining what it would be like for me to be in their situation. I mean, it's a great start, but or their shoes, to go with that analogy. Even if you and I wear the same size shoes, which I'm guessing you don't wear 6.5, but you never know. But even if we wear the same size shoes, our feet are shaped differently. I'm going to put my feet in those shoes and it's just going to feel just a little bit off. So the better way and what we're really going for is not what is it like for Julie to be in Josh's shoes or your situation, but what is it like for me to be Josh in Josh's situation? That's the way to the deeper empathy. It's a good step to start with. What is it like for me to be in your situation? But it's even better and deeper for me to get to what is it like for me to be you in your situation with your thoughts and ideas and perspective and worldview. I mean, if we can get to really imagining being the other person in their situation with their perspective, and when we can show that, hand that back to them with gentleness and respect, that's such a gift because that's so rare in society these days and maybe ever. But there's a reason why I think it feels so good for someone to do that for us. I think that's rooted in the scripture and how God is with us in a very full sense of the word. He knows what it's like to be us in our situation. So, no wonder it just feels so good.
It adds something special to the idea of the incarnation and like how big of a deal that is. I love that. That's
huge. So we're going to talk about empathy and showing empathy, showing understanding, but we're also going to preface it with talking about the experience diagram. So the experience diagram is part of the relationship enhancement program model, and there's a lot of different kind of perspective models in the world. This is the one that we use. So with the experience diagram, if you can imagine a box. Especially for just the audio listeners. So I'll try to describe it as much as possible.
I will put it on the screen for you guys on YouTube, but for you guys listening, I'll put a link to the chart so that if nothing else on your phone, you can click the link. But go ahead. That would be helpful. Describe it as well as you can. It's pretty hard to. I don't think I could describe it very well.
We'll do the main parts. So if you can imagine a box, at the top of the box you have the word events, and events could be anything. It could be you're out of milk. It could be an anniversary. It could be, I'm pregnant. It could be all kinds of things, big to little. But then underneath every event, we have a lot of other stuff going on. We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have concerns or what things might mean to us or about us, and we have desires or wants. And so when we're going to talk about showing understanding or having empathy for someone, we're not just talking about a load of feelings. That feelings are very important, and we'll talk about that. But it's not all that. You have a wide range of things to pull from that you are going to be listening for as you are kind of being the other person. And so on top of that, this is my addition just from different things that I've been a part of that I think undergirds this whole experience diagram. If I could add it to it, I would, but I don't have that much authority. So I would say that underneath all of that, the thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires that's shaping how we view the event that we encounter every day. COVID, that's an event. This is not part of the RE experience diagram. This is just coming from my other experiences in the past several years. What I see in society, what I see going on. So underneath the event, underneath the thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires that is shaping how we view the event is another deeper layer that I would say is worldview and belief system.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Because that's so much deeper than just thoughts. Maybe even sometimes meaning. And that, I mean, if you can get down there to that in a relationally safe way with people, that's just golden. And by belief system, like worldview, we're talking about like things like religion, what we think about God and the world, and then belief system. Usually, I'm talking about what we believe about ourselves. I don't know about you, but I don't know anyone who makes wise, positive decisions if they believe at their core that they are worthless or alone.
Yeah.
So that's going to be underneath with because everyone, like I think just about everyone has some of those beliefs that are deep down that are still yet to be transformed by the truth.
Yeah.
But while you're meeting with people, know that that's underneath there too.
And if you're listening to this and you identify with that, like you feel worthless or alone, you can add whatever you want to this, but I just want to recommend therapy, strongly recommend therapy.
Yeah.
Because that could probably be really useful. And I know therapy
it
has
could
been
be
an
helpful.
amazing thing in my life. And I want to destigmatize therapy, and everyone needs therapy.
I don't know anyone who would not benefit from from wise counsel and some help with some different things, right?
Yeah.
So that's the experience diagram.
Okay.
Important part. And the other interesting thing about it is that you can have like one event, like you and I are both in this season of COVID, but our boxes underneath that same exact event may look very different.
Right.
Same event. You can have a couple who is experiencing the exact same thing, but based on their box, how they view and experience the event is going to be very different. So yet again, just because you and I may have been in the exact same situation, it doesn't mean that our boxes look the same. All the more reason we need to listen with empathy and skill. And that's how I'm going to help you.
So like that helps highlight like how complicated people are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think a lot of times we're thinking at the surface level, is it like either Republican or Democrat or something like that? And it's like, there's so much more depth to this. I remember this is like the experience. I feel like I only first learned this about pro-choice people when I was in this Facebook debate group thing for like a year with the same pro-choice people. And it's like, I'd never spent more than 2 hours with a pro-choice person in my life. And then I really got to know these people. I got to know Jessica and Ronnie and Kara. And it's like, these are real people. These are people with different cultural backgrounds and different desires and belief systems and very different experiences, different socioeconomic positions and all these different things. And they're all in some ways driving the things that they are saying to me today on Facebook. Right. And it helped me to humanize them, I think, for the first time. And so, people are a lot more complicated than
they are
just
intricate.
What they say.
It's not always, it's intricate and sometimes, challenging.
Yes.
It could be all kinds of things, but we are intricately woven together with a wide range of things. So how about we dive into the skill?
Let's do it.
All right. So there are 4 steps to showing understanding skill. It's actually not that complicated. So we're going to go through each one and then kind of the subpoints and maybe just little tidbits along the way that I have gathered in my 12 plus years of using and teaching this skill. So the first 2 steps are more inward. It's what you do without them really even, you're not saying anything. It's very important you don't do that. So the first 2 are inward, and that allows you to do the second 2 outward much better. So important just because you're not saying anything. Very important. So number 1, you listen in a way that shows strong interest. Now we know that's important. It's pretty common sense. But when you're listening in a way that shows strong interest, the image that I usually try to use with the whole box thing is putting my box, my thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires, even worldview and belief system, I put that on the shelf. I'm not denying it. I'm not saying it's not important because eventually I'm going to need to share that box, if I get an opportunity. But for the moment, I'm putting myself on hold so that I can pay very close attention to the other person, to what they're saying, to their body language, to what I might be picking up on, what they might be communicating. And I'm going to both, listen for what they're doing and watch their body language, but I'm also going to be paying attention to my own body language, which you all teach that too. You talk about sometimes, sitting or leaning against something, just being relaxed. and as engaged as possible with them. So not, this is pretty common sense, but not looking at my phone, not, try like, and sometimes you even have to structure. I think you guys talk about this too, when someone has shared something very personal, you structure the environment to where you're less distracted by other things, and you can focus your attention on them when they're sharing something. I mean, what an honor and a privilege that they would tell you something so deep, even if they're, expressing anger with it. What a gift that they would give that to you.
I love how you just used the word honor, because that's the word that was in my head about what I feel like it's doing to them. For you to put all of your thoughts and feelings and all that stuff on hold, kind of on the shelf, I feel like it's just a really beautiful way to honor them and the valuable person that they are. That also might be because I just listened to a sermon on honor today. Well, so I was just like, I've got that word in my head, and it's really, I'll link to it in the show notes because it's awesome. But
great, awesome.
The other thought I had as you're talking about this is literally the first part of the first step. And yet I feel like this is so hard for people. It is so hard to put your own very important beliefs and everything on this shelf.
Yep.
You have to, or else you're not really hearing them. You're hearing your own little voice. You're nagging like,
you're processing what they're saying.
I don't agree with what they're saying.
Yeah. And how I'm going to counter this. Then you're not actually listening to the other person.
Right.
And they're not probably listening to you either. And that's not the type of dialogues that we want to have. No. That's just, people throwing their own boxes at each other, thinking that it's going to do any good, and it's really just making things worse.
Welcome to Civil Discourse in 2020, everyone. Is this what we want? Is this the best we can do? Okay.
Yeah, box throwing, great, with like spikes on it and like all kinds of stuff. That's just not. It is what we see. It is what it is. So, so we did the first part, this internal part, putting yourself on the shelf so you can actually engage with them. It is hard, but it is critical. And if you have a hard time listening in a way that not just shows strong interest, but is strong interest, then you might need to get some help with that. Talk to someone. What's getting in the way for you that is keeping you from being genuinely interested in hearing their perspective?
Yeah. Do you see them maybe as like an other, as like the enemy, a combatant that you need to be
a thing to be conquered?
Yeah, that was exactly the word that I was thinking. It's like you got to win in the end. Like that's one reason.
Yeah, and then what does it mean about me if I don't?
Yeah,
you've got something else that goes back to the experience diagram. What does this mean about me if the person I'm talking to, I don't get them?
Yeah.
If you're struggling with that, and you might need to have some extra conversations with somebody else before you engage. So just be aware of it. It happens to all of us, even those of us who have been doing it for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to say I would never get defensive, in a conversation. One of the hard things about just being on this podcast is I think of all these other times of, man, I wish I would have just stuck to what I know to do. And it would have been.
I hear that. This is not us like gurus on the mountain talking down to all the peons down here that don't understand. Like we are guilty of this all the time. We are flawed. In fact, it's worse because we know better. But let's all try to grow together. Let's try to grow together. Give ourselves some grace.
It's so true. So listen in a way that shows strong interest. Put yourself on the shelf. Listen with an open mind and an open heart with the goal of understanding. Yeah. Not beating them down or changing their mind, just to understand. Yep. So that allows you to then, as they are talking, number 2, become the other person. Again, this is key to that whole deep empathy part. So you are putting not just yourself in their shoes, but in their heart. What is it like to be them with their thoughts and feelings, concerns, desires, even worldview, and even belief system if they give you a hint or an inkling of it? Yeah. So when we become the other person, man, it's just so much better. What is it like for me to Go ahead.
This has also got to be part of why you said this is not what you say. This is all needs to be internal, because if you say, I'm going to become you right now, it's just super weird. And I'm not going to have any idea what you mean by that.
Occasionally in like a more clinical setting, like I will do that. Or we may teach a couple to actually do that. And when we get to like step number 3, we'll actually use the word I. Like, okay, so now in order to really, really be you, Josh, I'm actually going to become you, and then say it like that. Okay, so as Josh, I'm on this podcast today and blah, 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 whatever I would say. But that's not how we talk to the person that checks us out at the grocery store or the person. That's not the way we're going to do it. So as you're becoming the other person, pay special attention to conflicting thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires, because those are going to be important. Again, not to, gotcha.
Do you mean by conflicting, just as a clarification question, do you mean conflicting between your belief systems and their belief systems, or do you mean like internally contradictory?
Internally within their experience.
Got it.
So it's not uncommon, had it not even too long ago, someone come in looking for post-abortion support. And on one hand, we had, this was the best decision for me, but I'm feeling really terrible about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with that. I still think it's the best decision, but I don't know what to do.
Sometimes, like, since you're coming from kind of this other perspective or worldview, it can be a little bit easier maybe to spot some of those internal contradictions that you would think we would be able to see, but we all have them. Yeah. And it's like sometimes we're too close to the painting and we don't see it, and then someone else can come in and help us see, oh, wait, that doesn't
Those
really
don't
jive.
actually jive, right? Yeah. They don't go together. Yeah, exactly. So just pay attention. And sometimes people will talk about really sad things, as you are becoming them and they're talking about sad experiences, they're laughing. There's something going on there. Yeah. And again, it's not to just point it out to say, gotcha. Right. But just to be aware that there's something deeper going on underneath that as I am them, I'm just super aware of. How do I feel as I am them as they're talking?
Take this a little bit deeper from me. Like as an expert, if you hear something like that, more of an expert than I am, I think.
On this particular topic.
Yeah, definitely. If you hear someone share something really painful and they're laughing, like you're aware of that. What are some of the likely reasons that is happening? Like, it seems like there might be a defense mechanism thing going on, but what does it signal to you? Because for some people, they're just like, this is just confusing. Like, I know there's something off, but I don't know how to interpret it. Like, can you help us to learn how to interpret those conflicting behaviors?
So we'll take a sidestep from becoming the other person just for a moment to address this. So it kind of depends on the person as I have become them. So some possibilities, some maybes are maybe they grew up in a household where it was not okay to express vulnerable things. So they may feel safe enough to tell you about it, but they have to kind of do something with that, because that's just not okay. It could be that they aren't completely aware of how they feel about something. They're expressing something that as you're experiencing it as them, you feel the sadness or the discouragement, but they have it with a smile on their face. It could be that they're just not aware. Those are two possibilities. I could figure out some more.
I'm sure there's more, but
there's
it could be like a nervous laughter thing going on.
Could be a nervous laughter. They're testing you out. They don't know. They're checking for relational safety to see if you can handle them telling you some more intimate things. Testing the waters.
Love it. Okay, I'll take you off the tangent. Okay. Back into becoming this person. You're being aware.
We're right. So that's pretty much it. Just be them. So listen in a way that shows strong interest, that then allows you to become the other person, that then allows you, now we're going to actually say something. Because it's not good enough just to say, oh, I understand. Oh, If someone says I understand, my immediate thought
Over
is,
and over.
no, because if you really did, you wouldn't have just said that.
You've actually just betrayed the fact
I'm
you
done.
don't really get it. Yeah.
You don't, right. So number 3, you name back the thoughts, feelings, concerns, and desires. And this is where we're going to be a little bit different from your typical kind of active listening and other listening models.
Yeah.
I don't know all of the listening models, but ones that are pretty common in society. So describe what you have come to understand, what you've experienced as them, and you start with the word you. Or I'd say it's with an implied you, like it's been a hard day.
Yeah.
Implied for you.
Right.
You start with the word you, and you focus on, what stood out to you when you are them. Not about your assessment, what you think is important, but as you became them, focus on feelings and things that maybe weren't quite said, but were very much. But you have good indication that they were there because you kind of felt them as you were them. You thought about them. This is kind of what it meant, whether they actually said it or it was kind of implied.
Yeah.
And whatever we do say, we want to make sure that we use compassion and respect as we name back what we heard. With our words, with our facial expressions, with our body language, with our tone, use words and tone, all of those things that show respect and not judgment. So I would not say something like, "So you just really wanted to be a lazy bum today?" That's probably not going to get heard, get them, feeling like they are heard and understood. You might say something like, you had a really, after you've listened and done all the things, you had a really rough day yesterday.
Yeah.
It took a lot out of you and you didn't really want to do much on this day, kind of make up for it.
That's so much more empathetic.
Yes.
You've taken all the judgment out of it.
Yes, which that is stuff that they're going to be more readily accepting of what I just said, which is what I want.
Yeah.
So also in kind of contrast to, or slightly different than active listening, we want to leave out phrases. Again, I was taught it in my degree classes, but we want in this model. We want to leave out phrases such as, "So what I hear you saying is, what I understand that you, it seems to me that you are," I'm using the word I in all of those. And in this particular time of listening, I am on the shelf. If I start to say the word I, like, no, I'm up there, because right now it isn't really about it is about me understanding, but right now the focus is on them. It's about the you, not the I. So that's why we changed that language. You this, you that, you're trying to wrestle through a lot of complex things right now. You feel really strongly about your opinion. You were really unsure about coming up here and talking to me at this table today. Whatever they just said, that's a little bit more of how you would do it, and some examples.
Yeah, like the example that came to my head when you first said name their thoughts, feelings, concerns, meanings, and desires was what Jacob on our team teaches. It's like one of the things that he will have as sort of his opening line when he's sidewalk counseling. Is there'll be, a girl walking to the clinic and he'll just say, "You're having a really hard day.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry about that." Like something like that.
Yeah. You're having a really hard day. Now, I'm sorry about, that's more of kind of his expression of his life. That's how he feels. But in general, that's a great start. This is not where you expected to be today. I've used that various times with people within the, within the clinic. This was not part of your plans. This is the last place that you thought and you wanted to be today. This was not part of your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday agenda. You're having a really hard time.
This is all going to happen then before. So like we'll talk about at some point in the conversation, usually after you've hopefully done a lot of listening and asked kind of whatever clarification questions you needed to try to get a sense of their view. Like at some point you kind of rephrase what you hear them saying. You kind of like at some point you're going to say something like, okay, here's what I hear you saying is that you were, and you kind of summarize the worldview that you've gotten from them. So then they can like correct any mistakes that you've made. But that all happens later.
After
this process. This is
After
your naming. Here are your thoughts. Here are your feelings.
Right.
Here are your desires that you've got.
Right. And we get a little, I want to like speak to just something that I usually get a little bit of pushback on that one. I've heard various times, well, isn't this just like you're just telling them how to feel? Because, and I get that because you are using you. Yeah. But it's more like, Josh, if you are bleeding, I'm just recognizing the fact that you're bleeding. Right. I'm not saying anything. I'm not making any judgment about it. I'm just recognizing what I see is already there. Or if you're limping, you might say, and that's not a feeling or worldview thing. That's just, you're hurt. Something happened. And notice my tone and my inflection as I say that. When we name thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires, whatever we've heard and experienced, then we say it in a declarative way, not a question. So it's really easy. I could say, Josh, you had a good day today. Or I can say, Josh, you had a good day today. So that second is a question, right? Which is not a bad thing, but when we say them in more of a declarative, just making the statement, it actually communicates more acceptance. Yeah. Of this is just where you are right now. Yeah. So and again, without that judgment, there's an intuition that I'm having. Tell me if it's okay if I'm off, but my intuition is if I did this, that I ought to do it like even if it's declarative at like a low volume. You know what I mean? Like to like sit softly to help them understand this isn't a judgment. This is I'm with you right now. Yeah. I feel and with you. Yeah, exactly. And with you doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them. Again, we've already kind of addressed that, but showing understanding, giving this very empathic response, it doesn't mean that you agree with it. It's just I'm just recognizing that this is where you are. You feel very strongly about this, that you don't see any way that your mind would change about this right now. Yeah. Okay. So maybe react to like if I had to give pushback on this part, and it's not really pushback, it's just like I know that this is different than what I do in a way. And I'm trying to think about like I'm imagining putting this into practice, and some of this might be stylistic, and I don't think I'm right, but I want to take this deeper. Yeah, sure. Come back at me. It's like I use a lot of phrases where I am. It's like sometimes we'll call this open-minded ease. Like, we're not making a lot of declarative statements. It's like it seems to me that something. And I guess there's like some part of me that is worried that by making such a declarative statement about them, whom I've only known for 10 minutes now. Yeah, tops. Sometimes. Tops. Might come across to them as something like... being too confident too soon, or like reading too much into them, or a little bit like weird or something. But I don't think that's true. But like, help me understand why that's not true. All right, let's let's get down to number 4, and I think that will kind of address that issue. Brilliant. So one more point about naming thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires is that while you're doing that, again, you're on the shelf. Yep. So avoid, for the time being, asking questions. I know this is going to be hard because we love to ask questions, but if you're doing this model and doing it strictly for the moment, because you can ask questions later, it's okay. Yes. Avoid asking questions, giving advice, or giving sympathy. Like, I'm sorry, I'm just avoid that for the moment. Because again, that's about you. That's you being curious, which you can be. You can do that later. Like, I'm sorry. Okay, sometimes that's very important. But that's going to be maybe a little bit later, when you're sharing your box, your side of things. So just for the moment, you're just naming back, you're just sticking with them and their experience, what it's like to be them. You are on the shelf. Then, number 4, accept and make corrections graciously. So even those of us who have been doing this for a while and much longer than me, sometimes we don't get it quite right. We think that there's something there. We felt something, or maybe we actually have, and maybe it's actually there, and they're just not comfortable enough to admit it. We're just kind of bringing this, the sadness or the disappointment or whatever that difficult emotion is. We felt as we were them, and they probably are feeling that on some level, but they're just not ready for that yet. So, example might be maybe as you're naming back, you said something like angry. And yet again, for whatever reason, they are uncomfortable with admitting the fact that they are angry about something, even though they're bleeding with anger. Like you see, it's all over them. They're seething and whatever. But no, I'm not angry. How dare you? Then okay, so if they push back on that, okay, so you're not angry. You're frustrated. Or go with a non-feeling word. This just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you. You've been trying to sort through all this stuff, whatever, based on whatever they've already told you, you name back something different, maybe a lesser intensity emotion, or and the great thing about how this skill is pretty easily self-correcting. If you have done a good job or a good enough job of fostering this space of relational safety that is so important right now, they'll correct you if you're wrong. Yeah. Because it'll be safe to do that. It's already been safe to express anger and resentment and bitterness and sad. It's already been safe to explore how you don't really, how they don't really know how they feel, or it's conflicting. So therefore, and you're not reacting to it. You're not judging them. You're not shutting down. So they're more likely, again, it's not within your control, but it's within your influence. They're more likely to correct you if you're wrong. And even, so let's say you got it right, and then they go deeper, and you just, whatever they went deeper to, that next level, you just start all over again. You name back what you hear. You become them, and you name back what you hear. And they might tell you more. They go deeper, and then you just show understanding to that. You keep on doing that until you can just feel a shift with people when they've gotten whatever to whatever comfort level they can be with you, whether you're a stranger or someone they've known for a long time or anywhere in between. You can feel it when it shifts, and they are more open to hearing what you have to say. That's when you take down your box. That's when you ask questions for clarification then, but not until then. And you may not get an opportunity to do that. You may just be doing a whole lot of listening and showing understanding, which is still going to be really good hard work, because what a gift that you would give such an empathic response, and someone that maybe doesn't agree with you, but man, this other person, I don't like where they're coming from, but man, they get me. Yeah. Huh. Well, that's interesting. Wonder what that means. So respond
real quick. There's a certain kind of listener I want you to talk directly to for a moment, because I know there's a certain kinds of people that end up asking me questions after talks, and they're not a bad person, but there's a certain kind of hang up that they are having right now that I just as you are being to have the chance. Yes, I'm trying to be them. So they would say, this seems like a really nice process, but this is a really time-intensive process. Like I've got this really important thing to do. I need to change their mind about abortion, because this might be my one chance to talk to them, and they might get pregnant in 2 months. Like, this is really serious. Yeah. And it feels like this is going to take up at least half the conversation, maybe. And then all these really important things that I have to say to them aren't being said because I spent all this time not saying anything or just saying something about them. Right. I'm not sharing my box. I need to share my box. Right. They didn't know my box. They could need my box in 2 months. Right. Exactly. What do I do? To that, I would say at least one thing.
have you ever, I don't know if you've ever quilted, or let's say I've done some minor quilting, or marksmanship, you know, when there's common, you know, language within those things. Let's say, even in carpentry, my dad's a carpenter, or, you know, or was a carpenter, retired, but carpenter, built things. And so you measure twice and cut once. Yes, it may feel like this is just taking way too much time, but in the long run, you're actually going to be more efficient. And do we not want to be more efficient to make the most of all the seconds that we have of this opportunity? Yeah. And people are going to be much, much, much more likely, if they're anything like me, to be open to your box, your perspective, whatever you would want them to know. Yeah. If they feel heard and understood first. Yeah. So you're actually, I know it can seem tedious and, oh my gosh, this is taking so long. And now we're going down this trail and I'm just got to stay with their experience. And my box is falling on my head because I'm just feeling this pressure. Stick it back up there. Stick with it, because that is going to leave a lasting impression. Even if you don't get to that thing that you just really want them to know and hear, you're going to give them a different experience that they might not have with anyone. Yeah. Even people that they agree with.
I love that. Like what I'm getting from that is like, there's kind of this pragmatic side, but there's also a principled response to the concern. At a pragmatic level, it's like you're building this way better foundation. They will hear your important thoughts and arguments better if you've done this thing first. It's worth it. And I totally agree with that. It's really, really important. And probably
like building a house. You want the foundation to be sure. You want it to be really good. Otherwise, well, let's go build another house. That's just not helpful. And then on the other side,
there's also just like, it is really, in some cases, the most loving thing you can do.
Yes, it
is to give them this experience of being truly heard by someone that is different from them, that is from a different religion, votes differently, like all of that. Yeah. And on that day, that might be more important and life-changing for them than even hearing your best argument that you had in your box.
Definitely. You may be sowing a seed of doubt in their mind that everyone that has a different perspective is exactly like how they think they are. Yeah. So if this person is different and they showed me this dignity and respect, they may not even use those words, but you can feel it though. So maybe they're not how I think they are. Yeah. They may be more open to calling someone different or exploring something in a different way because of what you did with them. Yeah. Okay. Now you're ready to say something.
Yeah. No, sorry. I kept on thinking you were done with a sentence, and I was not doing a good enough job actively listening.
I was slowing down. Your turn.
No. So going back to the question that I asked before. So now I've heard step 4. So now I'll tell you what I think I hear as your answer, so then you can add to it.
Yes, I would love to add to it. Right.
I think your answer to my thing is that yes, you might get it. Your declarative statement at them a little bit off, but it's okay because you've set up this kind of space where it'll feel very easy for them to correct it, and you're not making them feel weird or awkward or something like that. Yes. I think that's your answer.
And actually we kind of got off another tangent. So
that was my fault.
Surprise. No, not necessarily. I'll take half the blame for that too. So what I was going with, those of you that can see my hands, if you got it, you made that empathic statement, you've done a great job and you nailed it. And they're likely going to go deeper. And then you just show understanding to that. And then you just keep on going. Yeah. But even if you didn't get it right or just right, but you still had enough safety about you to then they correct you, well, they've still gone deeper. You've accomplished basically the same goal just by being with them in a different way. Huh. So again, it's self-corrective. So you just accept whatever so you're not livid, you're you're just frustrated. You're, you're not confused. You're actually a little bit more, sure of, how you think about this. And you just, whatever that just was.
Right. So it's
you're
like
this right now.
It's like you can't fail because the step 3 is not accurately naming their feeling or whatever. It's naming a feeling so that either you said it right or they correct you and they say it right. But it was the naming something that was like the more important step.
And
That's so interesting.
And how comfortable you are with it, with naming that, of just making the statement of this is just where you are right now. Like you think right now, I mean, I said this just the other day. Right now, you think abortion is the best choice for you. Yeah. And of course, that's not all that we said. Right. But as we're listening, this is just where you are right now. And I've even had one time, I even had someone say, because I like adding that word right now, because that's just a slight implication that, something might change, because it might. I even had someone push back on that and corrected me and said, no, it's not just right now. Like, that is how it is. And so I just showed understanding of that. Okay, so there's no wiggle room here. Like it is the best option to you. You believe that is the best option, and there's no room for anything else. And this is just where, and not just right now. This is where you are, and this is where you fully expect to be from here on out. Just making the statement.
Wow,
it's pretty effective. Just saying.
It's so interesting. Like, it's definitely really different than my style, but I love it. I'm super intrigued by it. And
you guys love like trying new things.
Yes, this is definitely, I have to add this to my list of things that I need to try at my next outreach. It is, you were stretching me, but I love it.
Yeah. And I'd say when you're I mean, you can jump in and just use this like, right off the bat. However, what I usually encourage people to do is to try it first in kind of low risk situations. Yeah,
smart.
Show understanding time you maybe, well, if you're allowed to in your state, wherever you are at this time, if you are allowed to go out to eat, or, order something somewhere, usually you have someone that asks you how your day is. And you might tell them depending on the relational safety you have with this person, how comfortable you are. You might tell them something. You might tell them, oh, it's going okay. How about you? And whatever they say, show understanding to that. Yeah. Instead of say, oh, that's good, or, well, good to hear. Well, that's your box. That's your assessment of that. How about you say something like, if they said, for example, oh, I'm doing okay. Well, then you might say, okay, so it's not your best day, but it's not your worst day. And, you're just here. You're doing all right. It's just an expansion of what they just said. And it's very easy declarative statement. Like when we're learning any new skill on the soccer field, or, playing, Josh, you play some type of instrument, I believe.
I play, like piano and guitar and stuff like that.
Piano and guitar. So if you were going to do some performance with that, you're probably, I'm guessing, going to practice that piece in a more private setting. Right. And so you practice when the game is not on the line. Yeah. So that when you then go into some situations where maybe it's a little harder to do something new and have your wits about you, you already have some practice. Yeah. So that's what I usually encourage people to do. So this is one more thing that I have experienced and found to be just a helpful tidbit. Some people are very uncomfortable with you actually naming their emotions. You might name a feeling, and they might just react really strongly to that because it just doesn't feel good for whatever reason. They don't like their feelings being named, even though they're right there. So first of all, I'd pull back and say something more addressing their thoughts or their desires. One of those other parts of the experience diagram, because remember, you have so much more to work with than feelings. Yeah. You've got a lot there. Also, another helpful tidbit for the naming what you hear is, while we say to focus on feelings and what's not quite said, I rarely actually use the word feel. Interesting. I will not say you feel sad, you feel disappointed. Yeah. Don't say that. I really just use the phrase you are. Because again, when you use that feeling where people are really, really just tricky right now, and maybe in general, but right now about the word feelings, even though we're supposed to accept all the feelings and do all the things, people are very often very uncomfortable with you just saying that word. So a way that you can bypass that and still show understanding to the feelings is just don't use the word feel if you want to do it like me.
That's so interesting.
It's helpful. Just say you're sad, you're upset, you're disappointed, you're scared, you're concerned. You're excited. You don't have to show understanding just to hard stuff. It could be really, really good stuff. You have had the best day ever. You don't think this day could get any better. It's just been one good thing right after another. You can show understanding to whatever the experience is. But try not using the word feel. Yeah. But still naming all the feelings.
That's just like a really helpful tip that you only know if you've done this a whole bunch of times and kind of figure it out. Oh, that's a landmine. Let's just avoid that.
You don't want to. If I could, and I was thinking about that as I was preparing for this podcast in the first place, about how I just want to share all of the tidbits that I have picked up along the way, because just the steps and then the sub steps, there's just so much more that I want all of you to have, so that you're more. I can't control your experience with other people and using this, but I want you to have the most information so that you are more likely to have a positive experience, not just for you, but for the person that you're working with.
That's I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. What are the most common mistakes that people make when they first start putting this into practice?
What common mistakes?
Ways like people can try this, but just like they miss some part of it, or they tweak it in the wrong way, and it and it's usually in the naming part, which is an indication that they might not have done the first half super effectively. Maybe I didn't explain it well enough, or they just weren't in a place where they thought they knew what I was talking about. Yeah. So it's not uncommon for people to ask questions. Like, I just told you to don't ask questions and don't say you're sorry. Like, not right now. Wait. But they'll just very quickly go into sharing their box. Even in that little bit. Yeah. You can say that later. But you might find that it's unnecessary. Some of the times, things that you think would have been helpful, like you thought they would be helpful here, but actually the more you listen, you realize, okay, that was just going to cut them off. That's the last thing that you want to do. So sharing their box, asking questions, still using some of those pretty common phrases that most of us in society are taught, but sound clinical and rehearsed and aren't always helpful or relational or, friendly dialogue-esque. Those are some common things. So tell me about how you've used this in your own life.
All right. All kinds of different ways with absolute strangers. You have someone checking you out yet again at the grocery store, and they say something. You can show understanding to that and just see what happens. I know so much about a former bank teller. I never asked her a question. I never said anything about how she, I never said, how do you feel about that? All I did was I showed understanding to whatever she gave me. Used it with children. It's great to use with children. And even when they're asking you a bunch of questions, instead of just answering their question right off the bat, you can show them understanding, especially if you're tired. You could say, you're really curious about that. Or, like you're having a really, even if they didn't say anything, like you're having a hard time getting that top of the marker. You're working really hard at that. You're just naming what it's like to be them. Even in working with people who might not say anything to you at all, you can still show understanding to that. Sitting, with a teenager who's, just sitting down on the floor by the wall. No, I know I've had that experience. Okay, so you're not really sure if you want to talk about anything right now. and just naming it. It's just a declarative statement. This is just where they are right now.
I mean, that's amazing because you can do this even if they're not talking to you.
Exactly. That's why this is so flexible. I would never sit down to someone in that situation. So I hear you saying is that you just wouldn't do that. It doesn't even make any sense. But you're naming, like, what is it like to be them? You're not sure if it's okay to tell me what you're thinking right now. You're not sure if that's safe or okay. You're dealing with something, but you're not sure you want to express it right now. And you might follow up with something from your own box and you know what, for me, like, that's okay. You don't have to talk to me. I'm gonna sit here for a little bit, or I'm gonna get up and I'll come back and check on you later. And you may want to talk then, and you may not. And either way, that's okay. So works great with kids, with teenagers, with complete strangers, with people that you have a long-standing relationship with. And, you just know that there's something else. You just can't quite figure out that one little piece of whatever that is. This might be a great way to actually get to the bottom. It's just worth a try. It works great in families and with couples and people with I know I've got an opportunity to show understanding to someone in detention center. We used to go to jail once a week on every Monday for like 3 or 4 years. I loved my work in the jail. And personally, I have never personally had the experience of being chased around the house by my little sister with a knife. But I can show understanding to that all day long.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter whether you've had this very, the same or similar experiences to them or not. As you become them, as you imagine what it's like to be them in their situation, you can pick up enough to make some really educated guesses to then express that and just see where they go with it.
So does that sound something like, let's just take that example and let's see, does it sound something like you were so scared when that happened and so betrayed?
Yes.
Like something like that?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And even if they, and just saying that. And so, and then whatever they say to that, they might say yes, and they may go on to something else. Or they may say, no, I didn't really feel betrayed, but it was just like, I was just running for my life.
Right.
Okay. So not betrayed. That wasn't part of your experience. You were just trying to make it out of that house alive.
Right.
And that was your main goal. So whatever they tell you and wherever they go, you just follow them and they'll take you where you need to go.
You seem so experienced at this. Obviously, you've done this a lot more than I have. And so I'm just wondering, for someone who's done this so much as you have, is there a certain kind of a situation where you've done this that was the most challenging for you? Where it's like, man, how do I use these 4 steps well with this particular person in this situation?
When I've been really tired, when I've been in a situation where I have kept my mouth shut for a really long time because it wasn't time to say anything, and it still really isn't.
Yeah.
That's hard.
Yeah.
When I'm tired, when I don't have my wits about me, we all get caught off guard.
Yeah.
Someone says something and you just react. Sometimes doing this can be harder. Also in situations where maybe you have a long-standing relationship with someone and all kinds of background, and that can be harder. In some ways, this can be easier with strangers that you just, because you're not emotionally invested in something. You're not having to work as hard to put your box on the shelf and then hammer in some type of wood and nails and just keep it up there because it just wants to fall down on your head. So we've all had experiences like that.
Yeah, I definitely identify with that. As I'm like imagining myself putting this into practice, I feel like the people in my mind that'd be the hardest. I'm not going to name any names or anything. It's just like people that I've struggled with. It's not the people that I'm really close to or they're really easy to engage with. It's the people that I have a harder time empathizing with.
Yeah.
So
right.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, sometimes like might be something that just might help a little bit.
Yeah. And if you're tired, this is really hard because, as you said, this slows down the dialogue. It's just going to make it take, like, I don't want to do anything that's going to make this take longer than 2 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm done. I'm done. So sometimes it behooves us to recognize when we're already tired and remove ourselves from the situation.
Yeah.
Before you get so tired that you just can't. You can't do it.
That whole self-care, start with your own mask from the airplane before applying it to someone else. If you're just done for the day, you're not going to end up being that helpful.
It's probably not going to go well because it takes energy to keep that box on the shelf.
Yeah. So maybe let me ask you just one more question then. Because you're an expert at dialogue and empathy.
Again, it's so weird to hear from anyone that anyhow, keep on
You've
going.
thought about it a lot. You teach on it. I don't know.
I teach on it. I've done this for a while. Okay, keep on going. You're doing great.
So it seems to me that people are having a particularly hard time empathizing with other people this year.
No.
There's something weird about 2020.
Not a bit.
And it's just like, I feel like, some people call me a dialogue expert, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody about anything right now because it kind of feels like everyone's crazy right now. And I'm hoping it's like this temporary thing. And after the election and after COVID calms down, hopefully, and so some of these things, just like, this has just been a really weird year, and we're struggling. Everyone is struggling.
Yes.
And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about why people are having a particularly hard time having discussions with people that they disagree with, whether it's about politically or about masks or like whatever is the topic. People seem angrier. People seem less patient. People seem more closed-minded, more on a crusade to get everyone else to think like they are. I feel like probably people are less empathetic. I was feeling less empathetic today. I was in a gas station earlier today, and they had huge signs for the first time on this gas station that are like, North Carolina, everyone's got to wear a mask. And there's like 2 people in the store, and they're not wearing a mask. And I judged them. I totally judged them. It's like, how do you walk into the door without seeing that sign? Okay, so this is not just everyone else. It's me too. We're all struggling.
Yeah, right.
What do you have to say to us? Like, help us.
Wow, that is big. So first of all, I think that there's nothing like a crisis to reveal worldview and belief system. It like just wipes away. We go past thoughts, feelings, concerns, desires. We actually do have those things, but it's just like whatever was already underneath there is now exposed. And people, whether they're aware of it or not, are very strongly attached to their belief system and worldview, whether it's good, right, helpful, or not. So that may be one thing. So not only do we have one crisis, but we kind of have a bit of a political crisis as well. Lots of people have very strong opinions for a lot of reasons, and they may or they may not know where those things are coming from and what they're attached to, but they're definitely there, and they feel very strong emotions. A lot of times, to speak to anger, which is spewed out a lot these days. Vast majority of the time, and from my perspective and my experience and in some of my training, anger often covers a more vulnerable emotion. Fear, sadness, love. You wouldn't feel, a surge of anger against someone that, let's say drives too fast on your street if you weren't scared that maybe one of your children was close to the road, and you wouldn't feel that fear if you didn't love them so much. So it's like a split second cascade of things, but what comes out might be you fist. And so when you see people being really angry about things, again, people, they're reacting. That is a reaction often from the back of the brain, the more reptilian part, that stress mode.
Yeah.
And when people are in that mode or reactive like that, wherever that's coming from, they're not listening to each other. And so you've got anger towards anger. And it's just this, yet again, it's kind of like people are just throwing their boxes at the other person, just back and forth.
Yeah.
And sometimes people think that they're listening and they're not really, or they think they're being empathic, or they think they're being, tolerant, and they're really not.
Yeah.
They're being selectively tolerant and selectively empathic. And again, it doesn't mean empathy and tolerance and all of that. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with the other person.
Yes.
It's more about recognizing that that we are complex, intricate human beings with backgrounds and ideas and experiences. And we're so much more than just an adversary.
Yeah.
But people are seeing a lot of other people as adversaries.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, along with the Band-Aid being ripped off and worldviews and belief systems being exposed, I think that's kind of adding to it. Maybe.
So
just a guess.
Are you optimistic that things get better? Like, is it like in my mind, it's been like, hopefully in 2021, COVID is like better and the election is over. And like, basically, if nothing else, those two things will help people to do less weaponized box throwing. Like, are you optimistic for the future, or what are you thinking?
I am in a season that I think God really prepared me for it well. Even back in the spring. So first quarter of the year, God gives me goals for each quarter. And sometimes they're not that simple SMART goal, that's measurable and whatever, but he tends to give me some goals, or at least has for about a year and a half or so, so thank you, God, for that. So helpful to know what I'm supposed to be doing for the next 3 months. So one of my goals for the first quarter was take one day at a time. And each of those goals that I had for the first quarter, they were all linked to a scripture, but it was that phrase of one day at a time. So right now, that is kind of how I'm living. Is I'm not even really thinking a whole lot about the future. So I don't know, because I'm continuing to, that's kind of carried over kind of into this entire year for various reasons. That's what I need to do. And that doesn't mean that planning is bad. I'm a big planner. I use a planner. I use the full focus planner at that. Like no kickbacks to me, but that's what I use. So I plan. I've got things every single day, and everything's documented. All kinds. I am a planner. I like to know what's coming up. But as far as focus and trying to figure out things, like the future is just a bunch of maybes and probablys. Yeah. But right now, I need to focus on today.
So then. Final question then.
I didn't really address that other question at all.
It's okay. It's okay. But you were super authentic, and that's more interesting than maybe anything else anyway. What advice would you offer people who are still wanting to have those important dialogues this year beyond using showing, understanding, skill? Are there just like a couple of things that you'd be like, here's just a couple of things to make sure that you don't forget to do if you want to optimize your chances for having a good, important dialogue?
Okay. So without the actual steps of the skill, listen first. Whether you do the becoming, whether you do that, just make the conscious choice to listen first, and listen for, even if things get a little wonky. Yeah. Listen first. Because if you have that awareness, it is more likely the other person doesn't. It's kind of if you have the awareness that this is important, that responsibility is now on you. Now, whether you choose to do it or not, that's up to you, but that's not their responsibility. Right. That's yours. So listen first. Yeah. I love it. Yep. You are a delight. Oh, this has been that's your box. That is your assessment. That's your thoughts on the thing. Sorry, I will listen to it now. No, I think this is super helpful. Yeah. It's challenging. It's interesting.
I don't even know everything that I think because I've tried not to be too much in my box. So I've got more processing to do. But I just think it's really great for people to hear it and to think about it and to try it. And I'm just grateful to you for reaching out and giving us a chance to learn more about this. This is great.
Join a pleasure. Enjoyed every minute of it. And yeah, I mean, you know where to find me if you have extra questions. I love to teach this. Not only because I know it and I can do the whole first training without even looking at the book. But because I've seen it be so effective, and so I'm really passionate about sharing it. And so you gave me an opportunity to talk more about it. So I really appreciate that.
So finally, if people want to learn more, if they want to follow you or your work or go deeper into the other things that you teach, where can they go?
Well, as far as showing understanding skill, they can look up the National Institute for Relationship Enhancement. You can look at the website. There are other people that are trained and certified in using RE in a wide variety of situations. There's RE therapists. There's people that are trained like me in the RE program to present it. Sometimes both. So that's one thing. More of a grand scale. I am not really on Twitter except for my work. I am on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I have to check. I think I'm Julie. Hold on. I think I'm Julie.B.Dodson. I
will find it and link it in the show notes.
Yeah. And if you want to read a little bit more about the pregnancy story and anything else that's kind of going on, I don't post a whole lot of things. Yeah. But if you want to read more, you can read some more about that. I basically gave you guys all the things anyway, so that's most of it. And they can feel free to email me, julie.b.dodson@gmail.com.
Awesome. All right. I'll post all the links in the notes. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hanging out with me this afternoon.
Joy and a pleasure. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you for listening to the Equipped for Life podcast, a project of Equal Rights Institute. Equal Rights Institute uses speaking, writing, YouTube videos, podcasts, online courses, and campus outreach to help pro-life advocates in the areas of practical dialogue tips, relational apologetics, pro-life philosophy, and sidewalk counseling. If you've been helped by this podcast, please consider supporting it by making a donation at equalrightsinstitute.com.